Welcome to this week's Gritty Life Devotional. I am sitting in my backyard today enjoying beautiful weather in South Dakota, which we have not had. So as we continue our journey through Genesis, we actually meet Cain and Abel in chapter 4. So we are in chapter 4 of Genesis. So I want you to read chapter 4 and then you can get some of these things that I'm talking about. But here are the first two brothers in the Bible and the first set of the age-old sibling rivalry in most simplest forms called jealousy. We are so accustomed to seeing jealousy between siblings. But in verse 4, we read the story of how Cain and Abel brought a sacrifice to God. It is safe to assume that both Cain and Abel were still very much in a situation where they knew God, where his voice and his expectations were clearly made known to them. So when Cain and Abel are described as bringing a sacrifice, it implies that they understand that a sacrifice is necessary and expected by God. And so they were familiar with the expectations. Although at this point in the Bible, God's expectations of sacrifice and obedience aren't explicitly explained, it's safe to assume that through their personal relationship with God, that they knew what was expected of them. So verse 4 reads, "And Abel brought of the firstborn of his flock and the fat portions, and the Lord had respect and regard for Abel and for his offerings. But for Cain and his offering, he had no respect or regard. So Cain was exceedingly angry and indignant, and he looked sad and depressed." So the significance of why God accepted Abel's offering lies in the word first. Abel brought the first of everything. He brought the best he had to offer. Growing up on a ranch, I know that the firstborn calf or the firstborn lamb is usually the fattest and the healthiest by the time it comes to sell your stock. So it has had longer to develop. It has had more nutrients, and those that are born later than, those that are born later. And so usually that means they are the best of your herd. In essence, Cain offered the ordinary, but Abel the best. And so in doing so, their heart condition was revealed. It really wasn't anything else but just showing what was in their heart. Abel was ready and willing to give his all to God through his offerings and worship, but Cain basically was just fulfilling a duty he knows he was supposed to do. So we can see that Abel approached God with a relationship in mind, while Cain approached it with religion or tradition in mind. And what we see is that God cares about the condition of our heart. He cares about how and why we worship, not just that we do it. And I think Matthew 22:37 repeats what Deuteronomy 6:5 says: "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your might." And so God enjoys our worship and our sacrifices, but he wants to know that they come from our hearts. Unlike Cain, we should not go through the motions of worship, just coming to church, raising our hands, singing because we're supposed to. But instead, we must adjust our hearts to put God first and give him all our first. And as we continue to read the story, we find that God is always and always has been a redemptive God. We talked about that a little bit last week. And if we choose to follow his road to redemption, because in Genesis chapter 4, verses 6 through 7, I want to read, "And the Lord said to Cain, 'Why are you angry? And why do you look sad and depressed and dejected? If you do well, will you not be accepted? And if you do not do well, sin crouches at the door. Its desire is for you, but you must master it.'" You see, Cain didn't respond well to God's displeasure. He grew angry and jealous, and instead of learning from his mistake or his shortcoming, he allowed his anger and his hurt to rule his actions. And you see, God encourages him, letting him know that he can still fix it. He can fix the offering, because God is a redemptive God and is offering Cain the opportunity to turn from his mistake and do better, to begin to worship God with his whole heart and let his sacrifice reflect that heart change. You see, it would have been so easy for Cain to fix this situation. In essence, God is saying, "Try again, Cain." But Cain chose to stay hurt and angry. And God warns him that if he doesn't change his heart, sin will dominate him. You see, sin's desire, or Satan's purpose for sin, is to rule and dominate man. Satan has always wanted power and dominion, and through sin, he gets the opportunity to exercise that power over each and every single one of us. When we choose sin over repentance and worship, it will hold us captive to its vices. Unfortunately, we see that Cain chooses to give in to sin and kills his brother out of hatred. not for his brother, but for the God that accepted his brother's sacrifice. When unrighteous anger kicks in, it seeks to get away from God and others and relinquish power for themselves. It is rebellion against God and his ways. So today, I encourage you to remember that there are really only two choices in life. Choose to follow Christ wholeheartedly and sacrificially, or choose sin, which brings along with it the power that will hold over your life. So many think that sin sets them free from God's control, from rules and from regulations, but the truth is, choosing sin gives the power over to Satan, who wants to destroy you and others through you. So today, if you're struggling with some wrong attitudes or haven't fully surrendered every part of your life to Christ, I encourage you to know that God is standing there lovingly saying, "Try again, Cain," to each one of us. Thanks for joining us.